Okay, it's time to make a big leap um, uh, to a new concept in biblical Hebrew. It's called the construct state. Hi, I'm Reverend John David Duke Jr. I'm the pastor at Concordia Lutheran Church in Newfane, New York, and pastor of St. John Lutheran Church in, where is that? Youngstown, New York. Beautiful, beautiful Niagara County, New York. I'm also the professor of Old Testament studies for Concordia Lutheran Theological Seminary in St. Catharines, Ontario. I've been doing that since 2004, and I taught Hebrew before then for a few years, and here I am helping you out with at least you should consider the supplemental and maybe another perspective on the thing. Construct state. So far, what we've learned how to do is relate a noun to another noun through a verb. So basically, we're acting on or describing another noun with a verb. The king killed the servant. Things like that. Or the servant was very important. Or the women cried out about the, well, you don't know how to say about yet. Let's see. The women called the king nasty names. See, always a verb between the noun, the two nouns you might be relating, or just the single noun you might be describing with stative verbs. What else have you gotten? Oh, you can do where they kill each other. So the king killed the servant in the temple, right? Or in the wilderness, or wherever he needs to bury the body. Now what we're going to do is we're going to relate the nouns to each other. In the Hebrew language, it's done through something called a construct chain. You cram nouns together without any kind of compunction. You just put them in there and see what will happen, right? And they run around together and they create a relationship. We would call it a genitive relationship. Genitive gets tricky because beginner students sometimes think genitive means possessive. It's not quite the same thing. What it means is there's a relationship between the two. Sometimes it is possessive. I possess this pen. This is the pen of Dave, and that would be the construct state, pen Dave. Okay, that would be possessive, but it could be just I don't know. I'm trying to think of stuff, just relational stuff, like the king of the city. It's not like the king owns the city, although he might think he does. It's just that his relationship is indicated to the city in that case, right? So that's about relationships. Hebrew does it by cramming nouns together. Well, if you think about some of the things you know about Hebrew, when you cram syllables together, you start dropping open vowels and stuff. And that's pretty much going to be the problem of the construct state. Now, since it is a new concept, let's read together and just kind of get after it. This is Bartelt. Please buy the book, Chapter 9. Nouns occur in two forms or states. The absolute, that's what you've been learning so far. Absolute. I like it that absolute is such a wide open sounding thing. It's a nice woody word to describe exactly what it is, right? Absolute. It's everything's there, big and robust and full. The basic form of a noun used independently. Construct. The form of a noun when it is dependent on, and you're going to hear bound to. Okay, we're going to bind these nouns together like we bind a man and a woman together in marriage. Right? And things will change. That's a good metaphor. I just thought of that. Another noun, dependent on another noun, bound to another noun as a part of a larger construction. Nouns thus linked together are called a construct chain. The relationship, there's that word, between nouns and a construct chain is often simply expressed in terms of possession. Genitive case, as though the bound form is possessed by, dependent on, controlled by, further defined by the further noun, the final noun, which is in the absolute state. I told you it's a rudimentary, elementary way to understand it. But notice how he even modifies and qualifies what he's saying when he says possessed. See, it's not so simple, but there you go. Devar Hanavi. The word of the prophet. Well, what happened here? Well, we need to know what happened there, because davar is properly with two kamates, right? What happened? Well, it lost its status as a syllable possessing noun. It's hooked into hanavi, right? And so it doesn't have um, its own accent, its own powers, and so it loses its ability to hold the robustness, and it becomes sort of gray, bound, you know, imprisoned, shackled. The steps it can take are much limited. The forms of nouns in the construct state. Nouns in the construct state are marked by a set of terminations different from those of the absolute state. So let's look at them in a vacuum real quick. All right. So here's what you are used to seeing. Masculine, no termination. Feminine, you have that tau ending, right? And that's going to show up again in the construct state, and it's going to be a kamates hey in the feminine. And then eem and oath. Those are, you know these things. There's no problems, right? No problems so far. Construct nouns are marked by the following. What's going to happen is the masculine is going to be unmarked, and we'll talk about that in a second. The endings for the masculine plural noun, you're going to take off the eem, and you have to think of it that way. You take the eem off entirely. You remove it. You geld it. And then you add on a sere yod. That's the best way to think of it for future reference. Don't think, in other words, that you're taking off the hirik and the meme and then adding a sere, because that gets things out of order, because the hirik and the yod go together. The matra letter is the hirik yod, remember? And you're replacing that with another matra letter, sere yod. You are going to get no kamates hey here. You're going to get a patak tau, right? So we'll look at that in context in a minute. And then the feminine plural, you're going to see no change. So there you go. You can look that up in the book. The singular, then, with a monosyllabic noun, and you can go automatically, your radar should go, oh no, what about polysyllabic nouns, which is like most words in Hebrew? That's right, you should be afraid. Sus, no change. Susath for our mayor, see that? Okay, instead of susa, susoth. And susim, it goes to suse, and susoth goes to susoth. No change there. All right. Nouns in the construct state are bound or dependent on the final noun for their accent and determination. And notice he keeps saying final and nouns in the construct state. You can actually line up 1,000 nouns if you want to. And you kind of have to sometimes to show relationships. So like this. I said the king of the city. Let's try another one. The house of the wife of the brother of the king of the city. That would be one construct chain. All the nouns that are bound to city will be in the construct state, and the binder, the husband, so to speak, would be city at the very end, and everything else is bound. And it will lose. It will actually. They don't. They also depend on. They're bound to that final noun for determination. What's determination? Whether it's definite or indefinite. We'll talk about that at length in just a bit. Now, construct nouns usually lose their primary accent. Remember, all these things are rule of thumb, which means they're not carved into the laws of the Medes and Persians and set as a stele and conquered Babylon. Construct nouns usually lose their primary accent, becoming proclitic. And you're going to see the dash, but I'm going to do this without the dash because you need to lose that crutch as soon as possible. The dash, the makef, right? It will be in the Bible about half the time, but what you need to learn is the state, not the dash. The dash will, boy, that's and you want to talk about fulfillment of the prophecy. It's Egypt is like a reed upon which a man leans and it snaps and pierces his hand. That makef will be the same thing. Thus, they show construct vowel reduction. It's like propratonic reduction. but it's got its own je ne sais quoi. It's got its own, spice to make it nice and interesting for you. I mean, if you're bored, this is the beautiful thing to do. Turn the TV off, learn some Hebrew. Long vowels, usually comates, in closed syllables, shorten. Well, wouldn't they? Well, yeah. But remember, you're losing an accent. So that's what davar is for. It's not an accented syllable anymore. And so it says, well, we're not accented anymore. We might as well just go to the patach. And that's what happens. Changeable vowels. But don't you know unchangeable vowels? Of course you do. Those are the ones with the matra letter. That's why I kind of focused on that a little bit. Watch out for taking things out in the right order. Otherwise, you get into bad habits and things don't work the way you want them to work or the way they should work, and you can't read what you worked so hard to learn to read. Do these things in order. Changeable vowels and open syllables shortened to schwa. That looks like proprotonic vowel reduction because it kind of is. If reduction to schwa results in two adjacent vocal schwas, which will happen frequently, rule of schwa resolves the problem. Remember all these things with it's just the rule of schwa. Devarim in the construct, you're going to take off the hirik yod mem. You're going to add the serayot. No change in syllabification, but what you're going to get with is comates is a schwa. And it's a vocal schwa. And v will not go v, it will go divre. When two schwas are walking together, two vocal schwas are walking together, the first one does the talking as a hirik, and then you're going to get rule of schwa B, which is with guttural letters and so on and so forth, right? Go review that if you have to. All right, we're back from reviewing the chapter there. Baraka. You're going to swap out the ah ending and get the off ending. First things first, this schwa comes from this comates reducing, and this hirik comes from this schwa doing the talking. Right? When two schwas, vocal schwas, are walking together, the first one does the talking as a hirik, and it's going to be the same thing here. And this is key. Example 7 is super duper important. And here's why. Because in the feminine plural, you have no change here, right? But you're often going to have a collection of vowels here. When you bind one of these nouns to another noun, it's going to go out of business, so to speak. It's going to lose its accenting powers. And this open unaccented syllable is going to reduce to a vocal schwa. And this vocal schwa is going to turn into a hirik and do the talking for both vocal schwas. So instead of birakoth, you're going to have birkoth. Barakoth becomes birkoth. That's how you identify a feminine plural noun in the construct. Okay, now this is all in a vacuum. We're going to put it in motion and context in just a minute. So there's a thing there. A noun in the construct state will not show the prefixed article. It depends on the final noun. The final noun will determine the entire construct chain, which actually has some theological import, but we won't do that yet. So, number 8, to demonstrate this, Devar Navi. Now, without this makef, pretend it's not there, you see a noun in the construct state. Schwas and pataks, where there ought to be bigger vowels, right? It's not absolute, it's construct, right? It's not woody, it's tinny. And it's bound, right, to Navi. Navi is indefinite. See, that's the reason why I don't like that makef there. There's no cloak and dagger hey there. And so it's a word of a prophet. You throw on the definite article, it's still bound to Navi, but it is the word of the prophet. Well, how do you say a word of the prophet? You don't use the construct. Devar Yahweh, the word of... Oh, note a proper noun is definite. My word. How do you make a definite noun? Well, first of all, you throw the definite article on it. That's one. Second, you You throw on a proper noun, that's definite because it can't be something else. It's got to be the guy, right? In fact, when you answer the phone in Germany, you say, "Here's the David." Where is the David? Here the David is, right? Those Germans, they're wacky. Anyway, that's how my uncles answer the phone. Wo ist die David? They don't say it like that. They say, "Wo ist the David?" Der David. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. And another way to make a noun definite is to put it in construct, bind it to another definite noun. Okay. Examples 11 and 12 show you how you do whenever you need to make something definite bound to another one. You use the lamed as the possessive. Again, relating the two, but this time without a chain. A word belonging to the prophet. There's the cloak and dagger, hey. Or the word belonging to a prophet, right? Oh no. Oh dear, you can see it. Special problems? If the gender of a noun seems irregular, that's apropos for our day and time. Except this is gender linguistics, not other stuff. The construct form will follow the irregular form of the absolute noun. So, if you're trying to say woman, which is isha, right? And the plural of woman is women, nashim, with the hirik yod mem masculine termination. You follow that. You don't go to nashoth. Okay? Same with avoth, right? Which, by the way, really, these two words, when you talk about the troubles of today, really put a kind of a, on all the exercising that people are doing over all this stuff over at Target. Segulate nouns. In the singular, the construct form of segulate nouns is the same as the absolute. Oh no. The loss of accent is inconsistent. Well, how do you know then? How are you going to know if you see Melik with the accent on it and Melik with the accent on it? Well, if they're crammed together, rule of thumb says you've got a construct chain. Oh, by the way, the thing that's bound always comes before the anchor. You could think of the last noun as the anchor. It's the absolute, right? And the nouns that are bound to it are going to precede it. That's an always rule. Otherwise, it is not a construct chain. In plural forms, segulate nouns show the regular plural terminations, but. So when you want to say the king of the city, you say Melech Ha'ir, right? When you want to say the kings of Canaan, you say Malkeh. What happened? Well, remember way back when you learned segulates that they're really monosyllabic nouns pretending to be polysyllabic nouns, right? It's Melech. Where did it come from, though? Well, these are really, invariably, these are really old nouns that come from the predecessor to biblical Hebrew. Way back, right? And the old word was malku, from Melech, right? And you lose the u ending over time, and it becomes malk. And then over more time, the kid couldn't pronounce right, but he was the king, and so everybody learned his language as the standard language, and it becomes lingua franca. It's Melech, right? And then when you put it in the construct state, well, the old form shows up all of a sudden, and so the kings of the land are going to be Malkei Haaretz. Okay. Minor patterns, third hey, you're going to have a segol instead of a sere. Here's some of these things here. This is a fun one. Example 22 actually sort of has a nice little sugary payoff, especially usually at this time of the year, or at this point in the lesson, like the book, chapter 9, we're in late November, early December. We're looking at the birth of Jesus in religious or Christian traditions, right? And here you have the construct of a hollow root noun, not a hollow root verb, but a hollow root noun. Bayeth, house, right? Well, it becomes Beith. And then you go, well, now when's it in construct? Well, Beith, Lechem. It's Lechem. That's bread. I know this. Bethlehem. Merry Christmas. Happy Advent. Maweth becomes Moth. And you see that a lot. Moth Hamelech, the death of the king, right? Tawik in the midst of, you're rarely going to see Tawik. You're going to see Tok. You know, and it might be healthy for you to see Tok at this point in Hebrew. Einayim. It's good coffee, by the way. Add an extra scoop. Einayim goes to Einay. Oh, excuse me. Feminine nouns with a closed first syllable show a seglet pattern. Oh, these are horrible. Oh, these are horrible. But they actually anticipate something coming later. So you have to spend calories on this. Please spend calories here because in chapter something, this is going to be super important. Yeah. Mamlaka. That's these kinds of nouns. Closed syllables, first syllables. Instead of doing whatever it is they're supposed to do, Mamlaka, instead of going to Mamlakath, go to Mamlekath. Yeah, it's brutal. And then you're going to get some archaic stuff. Remember I was talking about old stuff? Father, brother, and mouth, I guess, are going to be really old words in Hebrew from predecessor languages. And so they're going to show this first, this reduction here to a composite schwa, and then it's going to add a hierarch yod at the end of it, and that is going to be brutal. This is easy now. In a couple of chapters, you're just going to tear your hair out. Some nouns are simply irregular in their construct form and must be learned. You should anticipate always this paragraph in every chapter. So make a special vocabulary card. I don't know why I sound like Marge Simpson all of a sudden. A special vocabulary card for this noun here. Okay, woo, we did it. We've made it through chapter 9. Zakar, remember. Malak, to rule or to reign. That's a good Advent word too. Our God reigns. Malak. Azav, to leave, abandon, forsake. Ahmad, to stand. Ahmad Rashad. Radaf is a common name in Semitic languages. Radaf, don't know any people who are called persecute. Aim, mother. Ooh. Blessing, birka, we learned that one earlier. Maweth, death. Mamlaka, kingdom, rule, dominion. So now you have a lot of them. Notice here, you have the melech in there, right? King, rule, kingdom. So you'll see ha-melech, or actually you won't see that. You'll see malak, ha-melech, b'mamlaka, or something like that, right? But you will actually also see Mamleketh HaMelech, the kingdom of the king. Mishpacha. Nahar is a river. And there's a river in Egypt called the Nile. Mitzrayim. How do you get Egypt from Mitzrayim? I don't know. Why didn't it go to Egyptus or something like that, like Greek? It's Mitzrayim. There's some sort of dual thing here to help you. Maybe you've got two Niles. Remember, you got the upper Nile and the lower Nile, and Egypt covers both. Mitzrayim, and that's a dual. Mitzrayim. Peh, mouth, construct is P. Panim, you're going to see a lot of pane. Lifne, with the preposition, is going to say before. Regal is a foot. Sadeh is going to be a field. Midbar is going to be a wilderness. I don't know why you're supposed to compare that. Tawik in the middle, the midst of, and you're going to see Batok. So you might want to just skip and make that into a vocabulary card as well. Batok, in the midst of, right? In the midst of your suffering, I am praying for you. I sure hope you enjoy this and learn to love this language. I find the construct chain to be quite challenging, but quite worth the challenge because it's one of these moments where you change your mind about how your language works and you become a better communicator. Understanding relationships between nouns is a big deal in communication. So until next time, I'll show you some exercises sometime shortly after this one goes live. This is Reverend John David Duke Jr. wishing you all the best and happy Hebrewing.